When my mother passed away, it felt like the world stopped turning. I had just turned 26. Life was unfolding beautifully. I was engaged to Mason, the love of my life, and we lived only a few blocks from the house I grew up in. There was this quiet contentment to everything, a sense of forward momentum, like the pieces were finally clicking into place. Then came the call. It was sometime after midnight when the phone rang. I remember the way the screen lit up in the dark room, and how my heart dropped the moment I saw it was my dad. Something in me already knew. When I answered, his voice was barely a whisper. Trembling. Crack. "She's gone," he said. 2 words, that was all it took to shatter everything. The days that followed were a blur. The funeral came and went like a strange, colorless dream. Friends and relatives gathered from all over, pressing casseroles and condolences into our hands, trying to fill the silence with kindness. I remember standing at the graveside service, gripping my father's hand so tightly it felt like we were holding each other together by sheer force. His hand was trembling. He wouldn't let go. They had been together since high school. 32 years of marriage. She was his everything. I couldn't even begin to imagine the depth of his grief. In the weeks after, I started stopping by more often. At first it was just to check in, to make sure he was eating, that the lights were on, that the fridge wasn't empty. But then it became more than that. Emotional check-ins turned into staying for dinner. One day I realized I was doing my laundry there again, folding towels in the same way I used to as a teenager. I was tidying up the living room, fluffing pillows, watering her plants. The house looked the same, but without Mom it felt hollow, like something essential had been scraped out of it. Then one afternoon, maybe 3 weeks after the funeral, I showed up with a few bags of groceries. I was in the kitchen, putting away milk and apples and that brand of tea he always liked, when he walked in. There was a heaviness in his eyes I hadn't seen before, a kind of urgency. "Jessica," he said, using that full-name tone he saved for serious conversations. "I need to ask you something." I turned to him. "What's going on?" He hesitated. "I want you to move back in. Just for a little while." I blinked. "What? Why?" "You know, Mason and I." He cut me off gently. "I know. No. Just... this house is too quiet. I can't sleep. I eat dinner alone. I wake up alone. And I'm not used to that." There was a weight in his words, a loneliness that wasn't there before. Not even at the funeral. It was the kind of sadness that settles deep in the bones. I swallowed hard, then nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. "But just for a little while." Mason wasn't thrilled, but he understood. "It's a hard time," he said. "But if you think this will help him heal, then do it. Just don't lose yourself in it, Jess." So I packed a small suitcase and returned to the house I'd called home for most of my life. My bedroom was still frozen in time. Faded posters of my favorite bands, a twin bed with a worn mattress, drawers filled with old notes and forgotten mementos. Oddly enough, it felt comforting. The first few days were peaceful. We cooked meals together, watched old movies. Dad even laughed a little. It felt like the beginning of something healing. But then, things shifted. It started with small, strange requests. One night, he asked if I could sit with him in the living room until he fell asleep. "The house feels less empty when you're around," he murmured. I didn't think much of it. But the next night, he asked if I would wear one of Mom's old robes. "You look just like her in it," he said, eyes glassy. That unsettled me. I told myself it was grief, twisting his sense of reality. After all, how could anyone go through that kind of loss and not come out a little broken? Then came the night I found him in the kitchen. He was standing alone, holding one of Mom's old nightgowns, his back to me, shoulders trembling. "You remind me of her so much," he whispered. "Sometimes I pretend she's still here." When he turned around, there were tears in his eyes. I didn't know whether to embrace him or back away. I stayed. I comforted him. But something inside me began to shift. I couldn't tell if this was grief or something darker. The answer came a few nights later. We were having dinner, just spaghetti and meatballs. Simple, ordinary. He buttered a slice of bread slowly, then looked up and said, "I've been thinking about moving on." Smiled. "That's good, Dad. Mom wouldn't want you to be alone forever." He nodded. "I agree. But I don't want someone new. I want someone who understands me. Who knows this house. Who knows me." I tilted my head, confused. "Okay." He reached across the table and took my hand. Gently but deliberately. "I want you to stay," he said. "Not just as my daughter, but as my partner." Time froze. First I thought I misunderstood. That my brain had twisted his words. But then I saw the look in his eyes. The way he lingered, the pause in his breath. I yanked my hand away. "No, Dad. That's not okay." He recoiled, then stammered an apology. "I didn't mean it. It was just a thought. Grief does strange things." I wasn't thinking straight. I nodded, but the damage was done. I didn't believe him. That night I called Mason. I told him everything. "Jess, you need to get out of there. Tonight." But I didn't. Not right away. I needed closure. I needed answers. The next morning, while Dad was out on his walk, I went into his room. I hadn't snooped in years. But this time I needed to know. Inside his desk drawer, I found a stack of journals. Dated, organized, obsessively neat. At first, the entries were what I expected. Grief, loneliness, pain. But as I kept reading, the tone changed. He began writing about me. About how much I reminded him of her. About how maybe it wasn't an accident that I had come back. That maybe it was fate. One entry read, "Jessica is my light in this darkness." Maybe she was meant to come back for more than just help. Maybe this is the universe telling me something. My stomach twisted. That night I sat him down. "You need help," I said. "Real help. This isn't just grief, Dad. This is something deeper. And it's not okay." He didn't argue. He looked small. "Hello." But he nodded. "You're right," he whispered. "I've been lost." I packed my things and went home to Mason. That first night back, I collapsed into bed and slept for 12 hours. When I woke up, I cried. Not out of fear, but out of sadness. I had lost both of my parents, one to death and one to something I still didn't have a name for. In the weeks that followed, Dad started therapy. He joined a grief support group. He planted new flowers in Mom's garden. Began cooking his own meals. He even made a few friends from the group. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As for me, I learned something about grief. How it can distort reality, twist love into something unrecognizable, and blur lines that should never be crossed. But I also learned something else. Real love means knowing when to walk away. When to draw the line. When to say no. I still visit him once a week. We talk about Mom. We laugh. Sometimes we cry. But we never speak of that night. And we never will. Some things belong in the past. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. But healing, that's still possible. Even after everything.